Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Cryptid and Paranormal Kingdom with Carlito and Tom. I'm your host, Carlito, and welcome back, everybody. First and foremost, this is my first show back in the year 2023, which is only a couple of times that I've said that so far this year. But yeah, guys, I'm really excited to come back on the podcast this year, this brand new year. This being the first show, I try to look for someone special to be my first show, which I got the opportunity to meet Lynn Monet. And I spoke to her and I asked her if she wanted to come on, and she said, yeah, sure. I said, okay, great. So we got her on here tonight. Guys, this is a little different from what we normally do, guys. Y'all know that. You know how I normally do like a lot more cryptids than paranormal, but it's in the name, cryptid and paranormal. So I do want to dive into the paranormal side of things too. I don't want to give away too much. I kind of gave some away in the description, as some of y'all might have read, but yeah, I want this to be really special. So I'm not gonna say what's all gonna be discussed tonight. You're gonna hear it for yourself. And I hope you guys enjoy this. So yeah, let me get Lynn Monet on the screen, guys, because yes, she's anxious and waiting. Let me get her on there, okay?
Hi,
Hey,
everybody.
Lynn.
Hi, Carlita. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, absolutely.
Excuse my kitchen. I just recently did get a cast off of my leg, so I am propping my foot occasionally to sit here. So everybody's stuck in my kitchen with me again. So yeah, thank you so much for reaching out. I really appreciate it, and I'm excited to be here.
Yes, absolutely, Lynn. Absolutely. I said, man, this show, my first show, 2023. Like I was just telling the chat, I wanted it to be special. You know what I mean? And I don't know when. Matter of fact, I need to check because I started my Facebook, or mine and Tom's Facebook group. Cryptid and Paranormal Kingdom in January, but I can't remember the day. So we're gonna go on like a 2-year anniversary pretty soon. Yeah, I'm thinking it's like within this and next week is when our first anniversary. Now the this channel itself, this channel was more like in I think it was like in what was it? I think it was like in May or something like that. But anyway, yeah. So we got our group anniversary and we got our YouTube channel anniversary. Those are separate dates, but yeah. So yeah, sorry about that. Like I said, it's going to be our 2nd year anniversary. So I'm really looking forward to that, and kind of celebrating with the group on Facebook. And yeah, everything looks like it's going to be great this year. And I can't wait to have all the exciting and interesting guests on the show that this year holds for us. So yeah, Lynn,
Yes.
can you give us a brief bio about yourself, please?
Sure, sure.
Thank you.
I am a world-renowned author. I'm also on the board of directors for the soon-to-be-released in 2023 Health and Recovery magazine. I currently have 4 books out on, through my website, www.lynnmonet.com. The first one being Omnipresent, which is going to be a 5-part series. And just to back up too, I've been a nurse for 37 years. 17 of which has been in end-of-life care and helping people cross over. So I've done that also. But back to my books, I've got the Omnipresent series. It's going to be a series of 5 different books, starting with Omnipresent, then Omnipresent, What Happened Next. I'm just finishing up Omnipresent 111 Becky Dawn Drive, which is about, also, I'll go into each of them in a little bit of detail. And I have one out called The Gap, which is a book for adolescents and teens, kind of touches where the birds and the bees leave off and the human trafficking picks up and fills in the blank there, which is why it's called The Gap. And then I'll be releasing the sequel, the 3rd book of Omnipresent, probably around May. So I've got several books that are out that are exciting. As far as me, I have had abilities ever since I was very, very young. I grew up in a haunted house. The house that I lived in was three short blocks behind a hospital with a nursing home connected to it, as well as there were Indian mounds on the opposite side of the hospital. So my siblings and I, we saw patients in patient gowns walking through our house, Indians walking through our house, and it was a regular occurrence. And we would see them at the same times. But of course, growing up in the 60s, which I was born in the 60s, so you didn't really mention that kind of thing because you would literally have men in white coats come and pick you up because people would think that you were crazy. So of course, in your family, that's not exactly something that you wanted to have gotten out into the neighborhood and be labeled as. But when I was about 5 years old, something very profound happened with me. My brother and I were in our parents' master bedroom playing on the floor. He was playing on the floor. I was in my mom's jewelry box, dolling myself up with all of her jewelry. And I turned to show my brother how glamorous I had made myself. And he was fixated on the corner of the room. And so I turned to look and see what he was looking at. And there was a misting in the room in the corner, which I have since learned that it's a form of ectoplasm, not the wet kind, but the misting, lacy kind. And in that corner stepped in my brother's best friend, John, his mother, father, and brother behind him. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, did you want to ask something?
No. I was just saying hi to a buddy of mine.
Okay, sorry. So anyway, so they had stepped in, and my brother and I, we both see this at the same time. So I run out of one doorway, he runs out of the other one. We're both looking for my mom, and he finds my mom first, and he says, Mom, John's here with his family. And my mother, of course, she's like, well, I didn't even hear anybody knock. And then he told her, he says, they're in your bedroom. And she's like, they're in my bedroom? Who let them in my bedroom? So, of course, she's coming immediately to usher them out. And, of course, when they got in there, there was nobody there. And my brother got in trouble for that. My mother, of course, got drug away from doing something that she was busy doing, and she didn't appreciate that happening. And, of course, I kept my mouth shut because I didn't want to get in trouble, too. But I did see it at the same time. And it just so happened that that particular day was a Sunday. The very next day was Monday when the kids all started to go back to school after spring break. It was a long week. And my brother was in second grade. I was in kindergarten. So I was still home with my mom for the majority of the day. And my brother was riding on the bus. And of course, little John was not on the bus. And so when he gets to class, John usually sat next to my brother, and he was not there either. And after the Pledge of Allegiance after they did the Pledge of Allegiance, the teacher stood in front of the class and announced that John would not be returning to class because he and his entire family perished in an auto accident on the way back from Florida. They had gone to Busch Gardens or Disney World or something. And it happened that day that my brother and I saw him come into the room. So it was as if he was coming in to say goodbye. And so that's kind of where it started. That's something that was really concrete that I can remember with my brother also seeing it at the same time. I mean, I had seen a lot of other things, but then when I moving forward a little bit, when I turned 10 years old, I was raised Presbyterian. My mother took a jaunt with the Jehovah's Witnesses, which, we won't go there, but I was still seeing things. So she took me in front of they took me to the church in a room, and all of these elders and people, the elders are similar to like a priest or a pastor in a regular church. And I'm sitting in this room with all of these men who are telling me all of these things that are wrong with me because I'm seeing things, that I'm possessed, that it's demons, and that it's all of these things. And it scared me so badly and made such an impression on me so badly that I actually became afraid of my gifts. And when I would when I continued to see things, I would literally run out of the room like everybody else because I thought, that's a demon. So even if it was something comforting, like my great grandmother at the time who had crossed over, I still would run out of the room because I thought that it was a demon. Because I was told by those men that sometimes demons come in looking like people that we know. So I kind of buried my gifts. I didn't talk about them very, very much anymore until I became a mother. I had two children at the time. I had gone through a divorce that damaged my credit badly. So we were living in a single wide mobile home, an older one out of necessity, while I rebuilt my credit to purchase a home. And I had been looking for a house for a while. I had this realtor that was helping me, and we would find places. And of course, I'd want to, wait a week to think about it. And when I'd go back to get it, it would be gone because as a single woman, I couldn't afford as much as a two income family. So my price range was low. But when this one particular house came available, and this is the one that I wrote about my first book. I think this is the one that Carlito mentioned that he wanted to kind of focus on, which would be the first and second book, and the third book also.
Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt you real quick, Lynn. I just wanted to kind of backtrace on that, on your introduction of the bio of yourself. So, can you tell us like when you noticed that you had this ability to see dead people, or this gift that you call?
It was when I was very little, and I mean, like the for instance that I recollected with my brother, where it was very profound because we got used to seeing them in the house. You know what I'm saying? But it was the fact that he and I saw it at the same time that even made it more profound. And of course, it was something that we didn't really talk openly about in the family because, like I said, my brother had gotten into trouble for even bringing my mother to the room, and I kept my mouth shut. But I've always had this gift and this ability to see what I call interdimensionally. And it's come in very, very useful in my nursing field with the 17 years that I've been in end of life care. And I've, helped people transition over, as well as, all of that sort of thing in end of life care. I've been able to, walk people through some things, and some beautiful things have happened with that. That I can share a little bit of at the end if you'd like. But
sure, yes, absolutely. Hey, and I wanted to ask you one more thing. Is anybody else in your family? Well, you mentioned your brother, but maybe like your mom, your grandmother, or somebody that had this ability?
It was my father.
Oh, it was your father?
Yes, but we didn't find out about it until he was much, much older. Because again, that's just you didn't want to be labeled the crazy people, and
right.
and it just so happened that he had another relative that was like a great aunt or somebody on his mother's side that was also very gifted, but they ended up institutionalizing her. I can't even say the word. Yes, because that's what they did back then. They perform lobotomies on people, so you just didn't. So my father did not talk about his gifts. He actually opened up to me after I went through what I went through with the house that I wrote the book about. And then he came forward and started telling things about the near-death experience that he had, as well as some of the things that he experienced as a child that were spiritual, because he felt safe doing it. Times had changed. People were kind of more interested in that stuff. Like now, even with that, the medical field still sees people that are hearing voices and those sorts of things as schizophrenic. And on a nursing level and a professional level, and I'm going to kind of jump ahead here. I actually went back to college to further my degree. I have 2 degrees. I have a nursing degree. I also have a degree in biological science. And but I went back to further my nursing degree, and I was actually placed in a we had a psychology class, so we had to have a rotation through this, some of the units with people with mental illness. And so I was placed in this, I'll just back up. We had gone in with 8 nurses and a teacher, and this was an area that was an intake area for patients. We had to actually sign papers that if we got hit or something thrown at us, that we couldn't, that we had no recourse to fall back on as far as the hospital was. We went in there, free will, understanding that that could have happened. And so we went into the room, and there are 8 nurses and the teacher. And this young girl comes up to me and she points at me and she says, "You can help me. I know you can." And of course, I'm like, oh God. I'm looking over my shoulder. I'm like, God, I hope she's not talking to me. I just wanted to be Lynn the nurse that day, not
Mm-hmm.
somebody that sees the heebie-jeebies. So, fortunately, the teacher came through and she said, "Don't make eye contact," and she ushered all of us out of the room. But the thing was, is I then got placed back into that area with one other nurse. So we were in there, and they had these wooden picnic tables that were literally bolted to the floor. And I'm sitting there doing my charting. The other nurse is sitting right across from me. She's also doing her charting. And the young woman walks up and she sits down and she starts telling her story about how she had been molested by her church pastor when she was 10 until she was about 14. Then her mother remarried, and her stepfather then was raping her. And then she finally ran away at 16 years old. And she then became
Wow.
involved in devil worship and that sort of thing. But the thing is I'm looking at this young woman, and she is covered in claw marks. She's
Wow.
covered in claw marks. She was covered. She had them coming out of her ear, her nose. She had them on her back. She was wearing a tank top with spaghetti straps. So even on her back, between her shoulder blades, there were these single claw marks, of which I recognized because in the house that I originally wrote my first book about, that I was never able to move into because it was haunted that bad,
Mm.
my friend got clawed to the point of bleeding while she stood next to me in that kitchen on her back and her stomach. So these scratch marks looked the same to me as what my friend had gotten standing next to me in the house. So I'm looking at her, and she's talking about all of these voices that she hears, and this, that, and how one of them, and I don't mean to be vulgar, but she did say this, how one of them had a long claw that was even scratching the inside of her female parts. And
Wow.
they go to call her away for her psychological her evaluation. And I'm watching her as she gets up, and I'm like, this girl's got claw marks all over her. There's no way that she could be doing this, but they were claiming that she was doing it to herself. But it would have been she would have had to have been a contortionist to reach some of the spots that she had claw marks. So she gets up to walk away, and because I have an ability to see interdimensionally, I watched her get up, and she had these, over each shoulder, she looked like Santa Claus. Over each shoulder of these, they were about as big as a standard size pillowcase, of these heads that were clustered together like grapes on her back on both sides. I kid you not. They connected at the shoulder with a horn type thing, and underneath the armpit they were attached at her shoulders, and they hung over each shoulder. And I thought, oh my God, this woman really is hearing voices. She's got attachments. So she went ahead and she went on. I'm thinking, oh my God. Of course, at the time I was going through some personal things, and I didn't really feel strong enough mentally and emotionally to deal with that sort of thing. I didn't want the things following me home if I did help her. I'm in South Carolina, Steve, and in near Greenville area. But so when she came back from after having her psychological evaluation, I went to her, I found her room, knocked on the door, I came in, and I said, look, I said, I'm going to tell you something. I know this sounds nuts. And I said, and if you repeat it, they're not going to believe you anyway. I said, but I want to help you here. You are really hearing the 25 different voices. You do have attachments on you that need to be taken off. And when you get out of here, please find someone that can remove your attachments. You have them on both shoulders. And something came over me in that moment, that I'm just standing there and I'm looking at these horn-like things that are connected in at the top of her shoulders. And I just went up and I put my fingers underneath them and pulled them off. And I was surprised at how easily they came off. I thought that they would be more attached, but some of them kind of started to fall to the ground. I was trying to stomp them in the ground, and you could see where they were kind of clustered, a few of them around her bed. And I told her, and she kind of pulled. She says, "It felt like you were pulling grass off of my back." And I'm not surprised. And so I told her, I said, "Listen, this is a temporary fix. I said, I have removed some of them from you. Hopefully you'll start to hear less voices. I said, but you still have some areas that need to be cleaned. You still need to go and get help with this. Don't hesitate when you get out of here. But if you mention this and that I've done this for you, they're going to keep you in here longer. I said, so please keep this on the low. Go and get yourself, some help. So lo and behold, I kid you not, I was in Walmart about maybe a year later. And I'm in the aisle, squatting down, looking at these candles. And these two young women are at the end of the aisle, and they keep looking at me and kind of whispering and looking at me. And of course, I start checking my shoe for toilet paper. And, did I split my pants or something? Because I'm wondering why they're standing there pointing at me. And the one girl then walks over, and I stood up, and she said, do you remember me? She seemed very familiar to me, but she looked so different, and she said, you were the nurse that helped me. And I'm like, oh my God. Here she is. She had lost weight. She had a beautiful little blonde bob. She had makeup on. She didn't even look like the same person. She looked wonderful. And she told me that she was in school becoming a dental hygienist, that she had been accepted in, and she had just started her classes for that. And she told me, she said, I did what you said. She said, I went and got help for the attachments. And she said, she says, now I'm only on a little bit of medication for anxiety. I am off all of my schizophrenic medication. But to back up with that, once I saw that on her, I started walking through the facility, and I could pick out the ones that were addicts, and I could pick out the ones that had schizophrenia. And this was verified by other students in there, because I'd walk over and I'd say, by chance, does your patient have schizophrenia? Yeah. Well, how'd you know? And I'm like, oh, well, I just wondered, of course, I'm not going to say that. So I started picking them out, because the addicts also carry a certain type of attachment that looks, I call them archons. They come in the shape of crabs, spiders, and this reptilian looking thing that has a tail. And sometimes it has a human butt. Sometimes it has a tail that kind of connects at the hip. And that's a whole nother story. But I was grateful that this woman did take my advice, and I'm getting involved with a group right now that's kind of trying to work with people with schizophrenia, hoping to, if they had a spiritualist during the admission process of having the doctor and all of the other people there, they would see this differently. Schizophrenia doesn't really truly have a medical reason for happening, so they kind of blanket it under some of the general mental illnesses. But if you ask what causes this, they don't know. It may or may not be hereditary. They don't know. So, and in the case of what I've seen, not that I'm saying that that all of these people are okay, because some of the people seeing pink elephants crawling on the wall, that is an issue that needs to be medicated. But a lot of these people that are talking about hearing voices, some of them have attachments that need to be taken off. And their diagnosis, in my opinion, would change for that. But I actually wrote about that in my second book, Omnipresent: What Happens Next.
I got a question before you continue. You just mentioned, right? And I'm pretty sure a lot of other people were, wondering this too. I've always said, like in past, shows, that drugs and doing bad things, opens up a door to having, evil attachments to you, right?
Yes, it does.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. But, and I've always, pondered and wondered, how or why, but I've always said, well, if you do evil, you're going to have some type of evil attachment to you, right?
Well, sometimes.
But how, right. So how exactly do addicts, drug addicts or whatever, them doing their thing with the drugs and all that, of course, that's a gateway, to open the door to any demon or spirit, whatever,
yes.
To kind of overpower them or want to, take over, possess them in a way, I guess. But how exactly does a demon possess a person with a drug addiction, or why?
There's a difference between a possession and an attachment. I don't see the drug addict people as possessed. They have attachments that are kind of like that second head whispering in their ear over their shoulder, constantly creating that temptation. The thing about people with addiction is it is self-created. A lot of times these things linger, these attachments kind of linger looking for an opportunity, because once they've attached to you, they feed off of the negativity that the drug addiction creates and the rippling effect even outward to the family, even into the neighborhood, that it that it that that
So
it,
that's what they
it
mean
feeds
by
off of.
negative attachments, right?
Yes, that it feeds off of that, and when somebody has an addiction, that's a full source. The thing about these archons, the way that I see them, is they have a head that is much smaller in proportion to the body, kind of the opposite of a baby with the bigger head and smaller body. They have the smaller head and the larger body, and they fit like a neat little backpack on people's backs, and they do have a way to communicate. So there's
Really?
that. Yes, that's the constant temptation. And the the thing about the archons is this: is once someone has gone through trying to overcome their addiction, the archon does detach, but it never leaves your space. It will always be there waiting for that opportunity to reattach. It becomes comfortable, being attached to somebody and feeding off of them. And so, it just, they're creatures of habit, just like humans are. They once they got a good deal, they want to stay with it. So they will do things to try to, encourage you to go back to the substance, and it's very hard to beat. And once you've created that for yourself, it does not ever leave, but it does not stay attached if you, stay away from the substance that keeps drawing you in and the chaos that it's creating in your life. The other thing too is on the flip side, when you do cross over and you are doing your life review, because everybody has a life review, what are you going to do when you look back on your life and you say you were at your daughter's wedding, but you were so messed up that you can't even remember when your daughter was born, when her wedding was, when her graduation was, or any of those beautiful things in life that have occurred because you were messed up the whole time? What a waste. But a lot of times too, people
Well,
start to
you know the reason. I'm sorry to interrupt. But Lynn, the reason why I asked you that about the drug abuse and all that, because I watched like a lot of like crazy videos. I'm not gonna say dark web or deep web. I don't get into that. No, but I do watch like real true crime stories. Thing. Drug addiction, like I try to understand. I try to get into their mind, like how they do what they do. See what I'm saying? Like serial killers, child killers, all that. Like I try to understand. I mean, of course, I'm not gonna understand because I don't know what they think or whatever. But like I try to understand. I try to see a pattern out of all the videos that I watch, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is why they do that, because they were either beaten when as a kid, they were neglected, or they were their one of their parents ran off, or one of their parents killed the other parent. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. That traumatizes them into being, very at a very young age to becoming a serial killer, and that's part of it, right? And a lot of
Well,
other crazy stuff. And I'm like, well, I had most of that what they had, and I never turned out to be a killer. You know what I mean? Like, why do they feel like they had to turn into that? But anyway, that's a whole nother story. What I'm trying to ask is, like I watched like I said, the drug abuse, the addicts and stuff like that, and the serial killers and all that. And my question is like, why is it always voices speaking to them? Is that a type of demon? Because that's another thing on serial killers. Most of them say that they hear voices speaking to them to kill a certain person, to kill their own mother, to kill their whole family, whatever it may be. And how does that go about to happening for a person to hear a voice? Do they have to be, like you said, schizophrenic? Do they have to be some type of mentally disabled, or mentally challenged, or mentally, traumatized? Or like, how does that, I mean, what's your take on that?
it can be anybody. if that window is open, and a lot of times those windows open with people that are having, say, depression, for instance. It kind of leaves them more open to having that sort of thing entering. A lot
Hmm.
of times people don't realize that they do have special gifts, so they don't protect themselves. And a lot of times the darkness wants to dub out the light. So the darkness will approach someone with a very, very large arc field versus someone who doesn't, because they want to douse the light. So, and to derail the path of that person as well. So, yeah, I mean, and sometimes some of those people, they're hearing voices, but some of them do also have possessions that kind of go in and out
Yes,
also.
yes, exactly, and that's what I wanted to bring that up because I've seen many videos, not all of them, like the drug abuse and all that, because I've seen like the
Mm-hmm.
Kensington and in Philadelphia. That's really sad. I've seen that. I mean, it's like they go through with the camera and just filming the whole sidewalk, and there's like I don't know how many streets around that area. It's like
Mm-hmm.
right under a bridge or some kind, and that's like the drug capital of the world right there, or the United States actually, but I don't know about the world, but the United States, that's like one of the worst places. That and Skid Row in Los Angeles, but at least Skid Row in Los Angeles, they don't go and film everybody in the tents, out in the streets and the
Mm-hmm.
sidewalks and stuff. But in Kensington, Philadelphia, you can look that up all day long, and you see bunch of videos. I'm not gonna say million, but you can see a bunch of videos on how they even stop and look at them, and poor guys are on the ground looking for something, or they're just like sleeping, standing up, and they're just like they can't go either forward or back, or it's crazy. But what I'm trying to get to is that I've seen many videos, not necessarily in Kensington, Philadelphia, but other videos of when people record other people, especially drug addicts, that they're down on the ground and they're like possessed. They're like, oh, and like their body, they feel like their body's all on fire,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just just twisting and turning, and half naked or almost completely naked, and then they're just walking like dogs on their legs. You know what I mean? And it's crazy
Mm-hmm.
because you think it's like that can't be normal. That can't be a regular person. That has to be something else. That has to be some type of possession, partial possession, that somebody's controlling that person to do that, right? Because that's not a normal thing for a human to do. You
No,
know,
it's very
and,
easily
and they
for,
even like
yeah.
change their voices sometimes too. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's when they ask them, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Oh, I'm not doing nothing. What are you doing?" Like crazy voices, like something
Mm-hmm.
is inside of them. You know what I mean? Like a possession type of thing. So that's why I was asking. Like, man, that's crazy. How do they get possessed? I've seen many. I've seen some that are like possessed and they even stab themselves, and I think that's the demon doing that to that body,
Mm-hmm.
to that person.
During my
You know.
psych rotation, I even actually had a woman that was chewing her own fingers off, and they had to bind her hands. And
Hmm.
the thing about it is that there, and again, there's a difference between attachments and possession, but everything is a gateway. So if you do have that attachment and you continue that substance abuse, that gives the the demon an ability to manipulate you more, and for you to act that way. Exactly.
Right,
So I mean,
because
if
then
you
you,
were in
you
your right
become
mind, you
more
wouldn't do it.
you become more vulnerable to the
Yes.
demon, right?
Yes, absolutely. And in
The
your
deeper
if
you go.
yeah, if you were in your right mind, you wouldn't be doing that.
Right.
You would not be doing that at all. And the thing is it's a vicious cycle, because it's very, very hard to break free of that once it just encapsulated around you in that way of the darkness. It's very, very hard. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I got a question up on the screen for you. That's from
Mhm.
Steve Riley. He says, "Can they stay around the Bible? People that are possessed."
Can they stay around a Bible someone
Hmm.
possessed?
Hmm.
Um, I'm not really I can you give me a little bit more on that? I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. Can they stay? You mean is a Bible as a repellent? Is that what you're
Right.
asking
Yeah. Yeah. I
me?
mean, can they be around a Bible? Like if somebody's in front of them reciting a Bible verse or something to them, I mean, can they withstand that, or do they kind of like the
So
demon kind of?
sometimes the reading of any type of verses from the Bible can exacerbate it and make it worse in some cases. If that's what you're asking, they'll start acting even more weird if they are possessed, because the demon doesn't like it. Of course, There are a lot of other ways to protect yourself too, and people have to be careful too when they're around those people, that attachments don't kind of come off on them, because if you're vulnerable, they can do that. So, that's another thing too. That yeah, it happens. Let's see. Do you believe in generational curses and effects of most? Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, I do. I do believe in generational curses. I do believe that people do that sort of hoodoo or voodoo or whatever it is on others, and it can definitely mess people up. However, on the flip side of that, you're responsible for what you do, and you will not get away with doing that where it really counts. So just beware of that. A lot of these times, these girls want to manipulate men into loving them. Why would you want somebody to love you that doesn't love you on their own? Why would you want to manipulate that anyway? And by doing that and forcing them, away from their path of what they're supposed to be on is not okay. And a lot of times too, these women, after they then find somebody else and get involved in a new relationship, they forget to take the junk off of the poor guy that they put on him many years ago. And not only that, so many people with lack of experience dabble in that sort of thing, and they actually create huge problems and portals for more darkness to come in, instead of the light. And they don't realize when they walk off, it may follow them home, or it may go too close by to where somebody else is living and affect them adversely. And again, when you go back through your life review, you will be brought back to that period of time, and you will put your feet in the shoes of the person who was adversely affected by what you did and the rippling effect of it. It's not even about religion. It's about, you don't do that sort of thing. You just don't. Everybody's on their path. Everybody has freedom of choice. But when you want to force something, it doesn't usually turn out very well. Not in the long term.
Right. Okay.
Let's see. Yes. Can they be within a church?
Well, hold on. Go ahead and answer that one first, right there. Yeah.
Okay. Let me just say this about church. Being a nurse in end-of-life care, I've seen all kinds of people cross over. I've seen atheists cross over. I've seen Jewish people, Presbyterians, Jehovah's Witnesses, you name it. I've seen a lot of people cross over. The only thing that keeps you from not crossing over is yourself. You can choose to stay earthbound if you don't cross over. And those are usually the things that end up haunting people's houses. But the thing about the church is that, yes, someone can go and have an attachment on them in the church, because the people in the church aren't perfect. You do have alcoholics attending church. You also have people that may have a hidden drug problem, or an infidelity problem, or a gambling problem, or the list is long of all the addictive type of behaviors that you have, including the minister. He himself might even be an alcoholic. So there's all humans that are going to the church or whatever. So yes, absolutely, somebody can actually have a possession on them and be attending church.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have another question from my good friend, OK Nana. She said, do you do readings for people who have lost loved ones?
Carlito and I had this conversation before we came on, and I do have feelings about things, but I don't feel confident enough in my abilities yet to do that. I probably could do it, but I want to give you the correct information. I wouldn't want to go and give you information and mislead you and have it not work out. So I kind of back off on that part of it. There are other people. Katie Turner is one that is the real deal. She's who I personally go to. There's also another lady, Lisa Teague, which is another excellent medium and reader that way. They both are the real deal, I'm telling you. So, and believe me, I know. And so if ever you needed something like that, I would recommend somebody that has more experience in that than the part of it that I do. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, she says thank you for your honesty. I have another question also. Where is it? Here. It says, spiritual encrypted encounters. Have you ever had to rebuke a demon out of a person possessed?
I have not done that. However, I've had to chase a lot of them around people's households.
Wow.
I've had to clear demons and things like that out of households, and yeah, I definitely had to do that. So yeah, but I never had to remove a possession. I have removed the like in the case of the young woman, I removed her attachments because they were visible to me. I could see them clearly, and I knew that like I said, to just put my fingers underneath it and pull it off, they came off so easily. But yeah, the possession thing, I fortunately have not ever had to do that, and I hope I never have to, because that's kind of, I
Yeah.
don't want, that kind of thing can follow you home, and I'm not interested in
Right.
having anything like that follow me home.
Right. And you
So
know what? That's another thing I was going to ask you. We have a lot of paranormal investigator friends in our community
mhm.
that they always well, actually spiritual and cryptid encounters is one of them. He's here tonight. That they always practice like a ceremony before entering and after exiting a place where they know that there could be evil spirits or
Salt bath.
yeah,
Get your
yeah,
salt bath. Don't leave that one out. That's for sure.
yeah. So like they say like wear some type of like necklaces with those special property stones, right?
Hmm.
Like spiritual and cryptid encounters, his name is Abe. He's always talking about how he uses like limestone and like special properties on their necklaces to kind of ward off bad spirits and stuff like that. Besides obviously saying Our Father before he goes in and when he comes back out. He kind of cleanses himself and all that. And other friends of ours do the same thing. Now I was going to ask you, does that really work? What is your take on that?
I think that your intention also works. However, keep in mind that we are all human.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, if we also have a little something hidden that we're not addressing in our own lives, it does put us at risk to have an attachment attached to you during those periods of time. So I'll leave it with that. I did recently, Nathaniel Gillis was on a show recently, and I specifically asked him about the protective, what would be a good thing for protection. And he said iron. So I suggest to everyone to get the powdered iron in a small container. It only has to be something as big as a penny, but to carry that in your pocket also, in addition to all of the other things that you're doing. And again, the salt bath. Definitely, you need to clear yourself after. You need to clear yourself beforehand. You need to clear yourself afterwards. I suggest that you're not under the influence of any medication or alcohol when you do this, because it leaves the way that it appears to me is like a Swiss cheese look to your auric field. When any of those little holes in areas are areas that you can be attacked or have something attached to you. So yeah, and another thing too with people that go in and keep in mind too that these spirits do have an intelligence about them. So it's like a lot of times you watch shows and people go in and they have the blinky light and they have the some sorry, there's something coming up on the screen, or they have these different things that they use, the shadow boxes and things, and that's all wonderful. But when you go in and you ask the spirit to touch the light, they touch the light. Oh, the light lit up. Okay. Well, touch it again. We need to get this on film. They touch it again. Oh, wow, look, it lit up. Touch it one more time. And then the person's asking you to get out because, these are people that have crossed, that have died, that have intelligence. And you think if you were to, if it was you and there's somebody saying, touch Blinky, we got to get one more show for touch Blinky, I would be screaming, get out too. So, I mean, they need to be treated with respect in that way. And a lot of times people go in, thinking that the tough persona and things like that is part of, the demeanor that you need to have. And it's not. You really need to go in with a loving, neutral attitude about it. They will run faster from you. Um, I mean, I've had some funny things happen during clearings that I can share too. But they will run because they do not have the ability, if it's a demon, to feel love, the emotion of love. Sometimes if you go in with not saying to love them, but offering to exude love out of yourself, that is definitely a repellent for them. So
Hey Lynn,
yes.
I lost your image.
Oh,
I have
so
your audio, but I lost your image there for a second.
okay, it said you're in the show, everyone can see and hear you. So it might be, is it something like, do you need me to re-enter?
Because I can hear you perfect. Like if you were here, did you
Let
by
me try.
accident maybe?
Let me try.
There
There,
it
how's
is.
that? Okay,
Okay.
good. Yeah. No, I didn't bump anything. But
Okay.
just so I hope that answered that okay. When with the books that I have written, going through the experience that I went through with the first book called Omnipresent, the cover of the book is an actual incident that it did occur in the house where there were hands coming through the door at my son as he sat on the master bathroom toilet. Traumatized him so badly that even now at 25 years old, he will not sleep without a light on, and he won't talk about it. He helped me design the cover, but he said after this, don't ask me to do anything else.
Hmm.
So the way that I wrote the book is so that if I had to sit on a lie detector test, I would pass it. You know, nothing is fabricated. Everything is very straightforward. It is a creepy book, but it's even more creepy because it's also real. So I wanted to make mention that as far as my abilities go, when I did purchase that house and went through what I went through with that house, that I was never able to move into. It was haunted that badly. There were two
Yeah.
demons. Yeah, there were two demons and a young man that had hung himself in that
Yes.
house.
Wow.
Um, People were getting clawed to the point of bleeding. There were all kinds of things that were happening in that house. It allowed me to connect with people of like minds. So, and people that were seeing things in the house at the same time I was. So I
Hmm.
was able then to honor my gifts and to definitely, build on them with that at that point because of the validation that I got, having that experience. So, yeah.
Right. So all in all, what made you not want to move in there? I mean, besides what you knew, but I mean, because I remember I listened to one of your other interviews, and you said that you had gotten that like a super cheap offer, right, to buy that house. I remember,
Mhm.
and
Yes.
it was like an offer you couldn't pass up, and right,
Yeah.
and so you bought the house and everything, but you never moved in because of all the things you found out about it,
Yes.
right?
The thing about the house was, is I had been looking as a single mother for a year, and as I had made mention that my income was limited, so most of the time the houses that I would be able to afford needed major renovations, or they had like a junkyard at the end of the street or something that was undesirable. So when this house came on the market, my realtor called me because her colleague had just come back from taking pictures of the house, and she told me, she said, we need to go right now and see this house. It's not even on the MLS. This house is in your price range and it's almost too good to be true, which of course should have resonated with me. And as we were driving there, I was looking through the pictures of the house, and I remember asking the realtor over and over again, to please call her colleague and see if the price was right, because this house was $133,000, and it could have easily have sold for $100,000 more than what they were asking. And yes, the price was right. And I'm like, well, what's the matter with it? Is it in a stinky? Is there a stinky paper mill
Right.
close by, or maybe the next
Yeah.
door neighbors have
Or
a
bad neighborhood or
yeah,
something.
yeah, what is it? And
Hmm.
it turned out to be none of those things. It was in a great neighborhood. It was on a dead end street. It had low taxes, great schools. It was in a very desirable area, and it had a beautiful third to half acre lot that was mowed floor to flat lot, which is hard to find. And it was in North Carolina, East Flat Rock, North Carolina. And so when we went there, there were problems with the lock, the deadbolt lock. Throughout the entire time, there were problems with the key going in. Once the key would get in, you couldn't turn it. Then when you turned it, you couldn't get the keys back out. The one lock seemed to be manipulated by one of the demons that did run the stairs mostly, and would come up from the lower levels. The house itself was a beautiful brick house. It's actually on the front of my second book. And if you look into the window, the kitchen window, there is a face. Also, that you can see looking back at you, that is one of the demons. And I took those pictures myself. So, and I didn't even see that face until after the fact. that it did show up. So when you would enter into the house, it was a split level house. So you had a foyer that had the ascending stairs and the descending stairs. So when the realtor and I pulled up to the house, we got the keys, and she's trying and trying to put the key in the lock, and it won't go in. We're thinking maybe that, they'd put the wrong keys in the box to go in there. And finally, it seemed like we'd be having a conversation. We were just getting ready to give up and leave, and then it would work. Then she got it in, and then it wouldn't turn, and then finally it turned, and finally the door opened. And then while she's sitting, she's standing there trying to get the key out, I decided to venture inside. And as I'm walking up the stairwell, I see out of my peripheral vision this man hanging in the stairwell. And the way that I see spirits is I see them as plain as I see you in my peripheral vision. I can tell you what they have on, what they look like, everything. I can also see them at a distance. They kind of look to me like when I approach a mall with a plate glass window and a reflection of myself. It's kind of that type of appearance. When they get closer to me, I sometimes can see feet or shoulders, but I see like this waffling to the air, kind of like gas fumes or vapors on a hot street that people have seen. It looks like that to me. So when I went in, I was still in my denial stage of, you're seeing things and you don't have gifts. So when I saw this young man hanging in the stairwell, I gasped, and I'm like, oh my God, why would I be thinking about something so terrible? And of course, when I turned and looked, there was nothing there. But this hanging was verified by the next door neighbor, who was the first house on the street. He lived there when it was a dirt road before they had even paved it. He remembered the family building the house. And I'd like to say this: hauntings can happen to new houses. It's not always the old house with the bad thing that happened. Usually the bad thing that happened is because it was haunted first. But the thing is a brand new house itself can be haunted if it's built in the wrong place, because it's not about the house. It's about the ground that it's built on. Right. And you don't know what was there before. So the next door neighbor verified that a young man, the very first people that built the house, the parents were going through a divorce. The kid had kind of a drug problem, and he hung himself in the stairwell, and his mother came home from work and found him hanging there. So it was
I remember, Lynn, in one of your interviews, you saying just what you just said now, but you also added that it might be the house built over Indian burial grounds or something.
Well,
you never know. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
500-year-old,
Yep, absolutely.
Indian burial grounds.
Of course.
And that's why it could be haunted with ghosts and spirits and evil entities. Yeah.
Right. And also, you've got to consider ley lines. Ley lines are all over the place, and they're energetic lines. And, they have vortexes and a positive and a negative. And that could have been, part of the issue as well. As far as somebody's asking if I cleansed the house, I had 13 different denominations of religion in there to clear that house.
Wow.
From the Catholic diocese, I went all the way up to the Archbishop, and all of those. I had Indians there. I had all kinds of people there. And let me just say this, a lot of people, they run and they get the sage. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're sage is fine for cleanup. Sage is fine if it's a ghost, but when it's a demon, it pisses them off. It will exacerbate the problem and make it worse. You've got to use something much, much stronger, frankincense and myrrh with dragon's blood, and then go in and clean up with the sage. But and people automatically assume that the sage will do it. Yeah, it'll move them away from you for a little bit, but when you come back, they come back with a vengeance. Right. And that's what I did find out with that, as far as having the house blessed over and over. And there are sometimes, if it is on a ley line or a vortex that's negative, you can't get them out, because when you get out one, another one comes back in. And those portals, if it's a vortex, can't be sealed because of the energy. Now, if it is a portal in the house, say where somebody crossed through because they passed away, yes, those can be sealed, but the other ones cannot. And sometimes you have to move, and that's what I did. I purchased the house in March. My kids had 8 more weeks of school, so I was going to do renovations, allow them to finish out their year in school, have the summer to move in and meet friends in the neighborhood, and then start fresh at the beginning of the school year in their new schools, you know, and go forward. But during that time, we only spent 2 nights in that house, and after the second night, we never moved in. So it was that bad.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really
Wow.
bad. So
Yeah, that one intrigued me a lot. On why you never moved in. I mean, I remember you told me, but it was just bits and pieces. It wasn't really a full description on why how it all went down. But man, that's wow. Yeah,
well,
and especially had 13 different priests.
well,
Trying to clean the house. Wow,
yeah, yeah,
that's
and I had multiple witnesses and in there as well, and it was just the only one that made the most sense to me was the woman that was a Native American that came at the very end, who actually saw the demon present, one of the demons present at the top of the stairs at the same time I did, and she was actually communicating with them.
mhm.
And I'll tell a little bit more about that so that it makes more sense. After going into the house and viewing the house, I did get to the top of the stairs, and I felt like a spider web thing going over my face, which could have been a portal. That's how I feel portals sometimes against my leg. They have this spider web feel to them, and they're big and round. And something was charging through it that was very negative. Like, it felt like it was right in my face to the point that I stepped back. And again, keep in mind, I'm still in denial, about these things. And not only that, if it was something, I figured, oh, well, we could just bless the house and, take care of it. At that point, I wasn't even thinking about that. But, later on down the road when I had to, oh, okay, well, no problem. We'll just get a priest in here. So, but the thing was, is that I had asked the realtor the same day if I could come back and bring my children, because I knew that this house, it really was too good to be true. It was a beautiful
Right,
home. And here we were
right.
living in a single wide trailer out of necessity while I was rebuilding my credit. And I
Hmm.
thought, as a single mother, I would be so proud
That was a great
to,
opportunity for
yeah,
you.
yeah,
Yeah,
to give
man.
such a beautiful home to my children. But so I ended up, and when we came back, I brought my son and daughter, and of course they're running down the room picking out their bedrooms, and nobody wanted the small bedroom upstairs, so they asked if they could go downstairs. Which downstairs there was a large 13 by 15-foot bonus room. There was a huge family room with a stone wall and a fireplace, and they wanted to go down and look. So I said yes, but within like 5 minutes, my daughter, who was 13 at the time, they both came back up, and she said, "Mommy, I do not want to live here." And of course, I was embarrassed because I'm standing next to this realtor who's been trying to help me find a house for a year. And
Right.
here's my teenage daughter saying that she doesn't want to move here. And I'm just assuming that, she's realizing that she'll have to move away from her friends in a different school. And, at that age, that's kind of hard on them. And so I asked her, I said, "What'd you say?" And she said to me, she repeated it again. She said, "There's something about this house that I do not like, and I do not want to live here." And I should have listened, and I didn't. So, of course, I made the bid. Someone else had also made a bid that day,
Wow.
and I ended up getting the house. And I said a prayer beforehand. I said, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And sure enough, I got it. So I assumed that it was a gift from God, and it turned out to be a real booby prize. But,
Right.
so
Yeah.
the day of the closing, which was something significant and interesting, was that the couple was very, very late to the closing, like hours late to the closing. And I went ahead while we were waiting for them and signed all of my papers. And when they arrived, the young woman wouldn't look me in the face. And I kept kind of trying to turn my head to get her attention, and she
Hmm.
would not look at me. She just kept staring at her feet. And I said, "Oh, thank you so much for this opportunity." And the thing was, is all of the things that I had been told about the house by the realtor, that the person, they had to move because they had a new job out of state. They were anxious to sell because now they had two homes that they were paying for, and all of this stuff turned out not to be true.
Well, yeah, she was just trying not to tell you what really happened, so you wouldn't get,
Exactly.
wouldn't want it anymore. But yeah, wow,
Yes.
that's
So when I found out, that they just moved 20 minutes to the parents' house, they were both still working in the same place. I just, didn't want to embarrass them. I assumed it was something financial. And I was just grateful, to have this opportunity to have such a beautiful home to provide for my family. So we went ahead and we did the closing. that evening, I brought dinner makings and the kids, and went over to go inside. And of course, I had problems with the lock, and we finally do get in. And I'm standing in the kitchen and I'm cooking, and my daughter comes in and she says, "What did you want?" And I said, I didn't call you." And she said, "Yes, you did. You called me twice, and I said I was coming. And what did you want?" And I said, "No, I swear I didn't call you, but I did hear you say that you were coming. I thought you were talking to your brother." And she said, "No, I was talking to you." And then, of course, then my son comes and he's peering in underneath her arm and says, "I heard you call her too." So when here are these things they had an intelligence and the wherewithal about them enough to immediately pick up that my daughter's name was Brittany, my son's name was Austin, and I was the mommy lady. And it mimicked my voice. So my children thought that it was me.
Yeah.
So, I told them, I said, "Well, Brittany's a popular name and it is dinner time. We're on a dead end street. Maybe there's another Brittany that lives on the street and that person's mother is calling for her Brittany to come home. And that's who you heard because I never called you."
Right.
So we ended up staying for a little while. Afterwards, we locked up and left. And I dropped off my kids the next morning at school and came back by myself. I was pulling up the carpeting, trying to save some money for the wooden flooring to be installed, and figured I wouldn't have to pay to have all the rug removed too. So when I entered the house, again, there were lock problems, but I came prepared, planning to come prepared with the WD-40 the next time. All of the lights were on in the house. I had gone upstairs to put my purse down on the counter and even noticed that the light on the inside of the oven was on. Every light was on in that house. Now, there was no furniture or anything yet, of course, but I thought to myself, well, this is odd. Maybe they're on a timer. Maybe because the house sold so fast, they didn't even get the for sale. I mean, it sold the day it was listed because I got it. So they didn't even get the chance to really put the for sale sign, out front. So I'm thinking, well, maybe a realtor came after we left and was showing the house, not realizing it was sold. And, maybe that's what happened, or they're on a timer or something. And so I kind of let it go for a minute. And then I noticed that the neighbor across the street was unloading groceries from his car. And I walked over and I introduced myself and I said, did you notice lights on? Or anybody come over yesterday evening? Because the lights are all on inside of the house. And he even made mention that he and his wife were taking a walk that evening, and that the only thing that they noticed that was on were the solar lights in the walkway, and that there were no lights on inside of the building. And so that day I left to go and pick up my kids, made sure all the lights were off this time. I locked up everything and I left. But when I got to the front door, I was having trouble with the deadbolt. I almost broke the key off in the deadbolt trying to get it to turn. So I finally opened it and locked the knob lock by hand and pulled the door shut. And I left and I picked up my kids. But the next morning when I came back, I went to put my key in the deadbolt and the door just opened. I never touched the knob or anything. It just pushed open. And I thought to myself, well, maybe that's why I couldn't get the deadbolt to work, because I didn't have it in the door frame all the way. I'm rationalizing all of this. But then when I went into the house, I noticed that every single peripheral door, including the sliding glass door, was unlocked. The pin was dangling, and I knew that was locked when I left. But again, I questioned myself. Maybe one of the kids ran back, and opened it, and that's why it's open. But when I went down into the lower levels to open the garage doors to unload boxes, I noticed that there was this workshop area that had a regular door. And I had boxes up against that door. I'm 5'9". They were about chin level, 3 or 4 box rows coming out from there. So the chain was dangling on the side of that door. And I'm like, there is no way that somebody would have had to have come inside this garage, moved all of the boxes out of the way, undid the chain, and then push all of the boxes back. So I go back to the neighbor's house again, and I'm knocking on their door. And I said, did you notice anybody playing in the yard or anybody that came after we left? Here's my phone number. if you notice anybody in the yard and my car's not here or somebody in the house, please call me, and then I'm on my way, and call the police. I told them, I said, we aren't moving in right away. I'm having renovations done. We're going to be waiting till the summer to move in. So I have a lot of furniture being delivered and things like that. And I don't want to change the locks because I've got workers coming in and out until after everything is finished. I'll change the locks when we move in. Right. So they told me that they would, but the wife came up and she said, listen, I'm not trying to be a nosy neighbor. She said, but when you left yesterday, you went halfway to your car and doubled back to the front door, and you were shaking the front door to make sure that it was closed. And I had even forgotten about doing that. Wow. So she actually, validated the fact that the door was locked. And I mean, so many things happened in that house that way. That was just the beginning. That was just the beginning of a lot more. Wow. It seemed like when I started having the clearings done, some of the activity did get worse than better. But it was bad, and I'll be happy to continue on with that if you'd like me to.
Actually, I got a question from my buddy Abe from Spiritual and Cryptid Encounters. He says, which room of the house was the darkest in the home where you felt a negative presence?
It was in the downstairs family room area. There was one window that had a deck over the top of it, so it was kind of dark. Also, it had the fireplace in there that was stone, which they energize off of stone. They like fuse boxes. They like hallways. They like stairwells, areas that they can condense and not be blown around, which most of you that are, paranormal investigators know that also already. But they were in that family room area. That was their favorite place to be. All three of them would hang out there. So, and that's the room that my daughter went down to and came back up and said, I don't want to live here after going in that room. So, and there were a lot of things happening while we were going back and forth. Things kind of amped up when we spent the nights there. I know that we're on a little bit of a time element and we're almost coming into the end of that. So I'm going to
No, we're good. We're good. I actually want to kind of move on to something else because you did, do a very extensive explanation on why you didn't move into the house, and you gave us a lot of reasons why too. But I also wanted to see if you can tell everybody about the story about your mom in the hospital. That's great. I love that story. That one and the one with the lady that was telling them, take me, and she was seeing angels down the hallway because they were taking somebody else down the hallway, another lady. Can you tell those two stories, please? Those are great stories.
Yes,
I want people to hear that.
Okay. As there is a negative side to paranormal, there is also a very beautiful positive side to paranormal. And as a nurse in end-of-life care, I've seen hundreds of people cross over. I've seen their loved ones come in to collect them. However, it was very, very profound for me when my own mother crossed over and I was there watching her leave her body. And this is a story that I'm going to share with you. My mother had cancer. She had decided not to go through any further treatments, and we were checking off her bucket list beforehand. And finally, it came her time. And the thing about people when they're getting ready to cross over, a lot of times they know. They'll start talking about, I'm going home to see Jesus tomorrow, or I'm going home to heaven, or I'm going to go see your brother and sister on the other side. Or they might just say something off the wall like, make sure so-and-so, if something happens to me, make sure that so-and-so takes care of my cat, and then all of a sudden they cross. There are three different kinds of death. There is a natural death. There is a sudden death and near-death experience, which all of them are handled differently on the other side. Most of us have the natural death, which is a little bit more elongated. And that's what I'm going to focus on here. Although in my book, I do focus on all of it. My mother, a lot of times too, when they're in the active stages of getting ready to cross over, they do this thing called rallying, where they're kind of testing the dimensions. Their eyes are kind of clouded over, and their toes are flaccid. When they come back into body, their eyes brighten up and their toes perk. And they start talking. Sometimes they even talk about things that they've seen on the other side as well. But and sometimes too, they'll leave the body before it stops breathing. Sometimes they can leave even as much as a couple of days early and the body just finishes. And sometimes they choose to stay in the body until the last minute. My mother chose to stay in until the last minute. And how I knew this was because she was still, even though she wasn't able to verbalize anymore and her eyes were closed, she was responding appropriately by trying to mouth words, and her eyebrows would go up and down at the same time. And again, it was appropriate. People would come into my mom, her name was Phyllis. They'd say, "Hi, Phyllis." And she'd go trying to respond to them. So just to move forward a little bit, as I'm sitting there with her, because of my ability to see interdimensionally, I see this misting that was filling up in the room from side to side, floor to ceiling, covered everything. And I could see movement on the other sides. And sometimes I could see like a pant leg stick out, or I could see a shoulder, or I could see a partial face even sticking out of it. And just to let you know that they do show up in clothes. Nobody wants to see their grandmother naked or their mother naked. So it would be pretty shocking. You'd probably run in the other direction if they didn't. So they do show up the way that you remember them last, the way that sometimes what they were buried in, sometimes what you remember them in most. It's different for those that have not crossed over. They show up still with their wounds and things, but when they have crossed over, they have not, they still maintain their senses. As I'm sitting there, I'm watching the wall, and the wall started to efface on the upper part towards my mother's bed. And I see my grandmother walk in, my mother's mother, and she looked the exact same as I remembered seeing her. She even presented in glasses. That's how they present to you, that you see them. And she walked over to my mother's bed and she started stroking the inside of my mother's arm. And my mother was sitting at a slant because it helps them breathe easier. And my grandmother leaned forward and said something into my mother's ear. And my mother started mouthing in response to whatever her mother, my grandmother, was saying to her. And then my grandmother did this again, and she did it 2 more times. And my mother, of course, was responding appropriately. When people start to cross over, they can hear the telepathically, the spirits talking to them, as well as they can hear the physical people in physical bodies also talking. So they have that ability. And behind my grandmother, I see this frantic wave. It was my beautiful sister, Robin, that had been murdered by a jealous boyfriend right after she turned 20 years old, a Baptist minister's son. So you were asking about churches and attachments. Yeah, there's one for you. So anyway, she came around. I could smell her perfume. Her perfume filled the room. She wore a perfume called Latisse in the 80s. And to this day, when she's around, I can smell her. But she came around from the misting. She embraced me. I could feel her hair falling over my face. I could smell her. I could feel her essence. And when she went to go back around, the entire wall had effaced, and I could see into the other side. And there are colors there on the other side that we do not have here. We would need multiple color wheels to even be able to touch on what they have there. And it's not just the colors. The colors have a energetic essence about them that when you admire them, you literally connect in with them and almost become one with them, like living colors. There were hundreds of people in there waiting for my mother. There were people there that I recognized, that I had known from this lifetime, that had crossed over. There were people that I didn't, but of course, when my mother crossed over, she did recognize those people. There were these angelic beings with wings, but there were also these other beings that looked equivalent to the angels. However, they didn't have wings. And those of you that are into UFOs and that sort of thing, it is all connected. It is all connected. You know, there are other solar systems out there that have similar life as ours. They might have different types of beings there, and we're all energy. Energy cannot be created or destroyed if you want to go from a scientific
I've always said that
notation. And so even when those people from the other solar systems cross over, or beings that cross, you know, their life ends, they have to go somewhere too. So that's why I'm saying I feel that there's a little bit of a galactic element there as well. It wouldn't really be fair to think that we're the only ones there, since there are so many other life forms. Every sunshine is supposed to be, every star is supposed to be a sunshine for a solar system. But anyway, Back to my mom. As I'm sitting there watching this happening, I'm noticing this group of beings that are in a football huddle up towards my mother's bed, and they were like double layered on each other. And when they opened, my mother's spirit was standing in the middle of it, and she was just elated. She was beaming from ear to ear, and one by one everybody is coming up to greet her. And like I said, there were some people that I didn't recognize but that she did. And I'm watching this, and just before that, and I'll say this, I said to my mom, I gave her a kiss on the cheek before she crossed, and I said, Mom, Graham and Robin are here to help you cross over. It's time for you to go. And she mouthed and she did the eyebrow thing, and she literally took her last breath in about 10 minutes. But I'm watching all of these festivities, and of course, the feeling that comes from the other side, the elation that comes, there are no words that can describe the feeling, and there's no feeling that can touch it that we have here. But it creates such a satisfying feeling in you, with a longing that you didn't even know that you had of what you were missing. So I'm sitting there and I'm watching this, and I look over and I notice that my mother has stopped breathing, and I'm grinning ear to ear. You're in that elation, you can't help it but smile. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, if a nurse comes walking in, I'm sitting here smiling from ear to ear. My mother's just stopped breathing. They're going to think I did something to her. So I called the nurse. The nurse walks in. The festivities are still going on. She walks right through them. And she pronounces that my mother has crossed over. And I asked if I could stay. It's like, I want to stay. I want to watch. I wanted to see what else happened. And so I'm sitting in there, and of course, the room is starting to thin out. The people are still greeting with my mother, and they got ready to exit. They started filing out on my left-hand side towards a window. And I'm not saying that a window, that could have been a coincidence. I know some people say crack a window. They did head towards the window, but it might have been the direction they were heading anyway. I don't know if there's a significance to that or not. But they did, and they made connection with the top of my head as they passed by, and it felt very, very tingly. But as a nurse, there have been so many incidences of things where loved ones have come in to help their loved ones cross over. I'm going to also tell the story that Carlito wants me to tell, but I'm also going to tell one to really bring this home for people. I had a lady that was blind. She was totally, totally blind. She couldn't even see shadows, nothing. Now, she was relatively new to my unit. Did you want to ask me
Yeah,
something?
no, that's a
Okay.
good one. I remember that one.
Okay. She was new to my unit. I did not know her that well. And her son and daughter come to the nurse's station, and they say, Mom's talking to people in the room that aren't there. Well, I said to them, I said, well, let me walk down with you and check on her and see if I can, you know, make her more comfortable, see if she's having any pain issues or anything. And when we walked into the room, Edna was reaching up into the air like she was handling something very fragile. And she was very happy. She was smiling over what she was receiving. And I asked her, I said, Edna, who's here? And she immediately says, she says, George. Well, her daughter had to sit down because her daughter said, well, George is my father. And my father passed away X amount of years ago, and that's my dad. And then Edna pipes up and she says, and he's glad that you're taking good care of Pixie. Pixie was her poodle. When Pixie went blind 10 years earlier, because George was not around to help her, the son had to take possession of Pixie the poodle, who was still very much alive. She was old, but still very, very much alive. And the son said, well, I have her. I have Pixie. And he explained the story that I just told you. And he said, do you think my mom's hallucinating? And I said, I can't come out and say, no, I don't think she's hallucinating. Loved ones do come in, and to help their loved ones cross over. So I said to him, I said, well, let me just try something. I said, I said, I'm not trying to change what you believe in. However, there is a period of time that a lot of times people miss because they're grieving, where they can also connect in with the other side that they're not aware of. And I said, so let me just try something. I said, Edna, can I ask George a question? And she nods her head yes. And I said, George, what color is your son's shirt? And she said, yellow. Now, keep in mind, this woman can't see anything. He had on a Ralph Lauren yellow, pastel yellow polo shirt. And he said, "Hi, Dad." He got it in that moment that the spirit of his father was really there. So not only were they getting to visit with the mother who was crossing over, but they also were now getting to visit with the father. And she could relay the responses because of being able to hear the telepathy and to hear the people in the physical body. She was able to relay things for them that they were familiar with. But in addition to that, if I could tell, there was also Abigail. If you'd like me to tell that one also. I had a patient named Abigail. She'd come to the facility for the 3 types of care. We had independent, assisted living, and skilled. I worked in the skilled unit. Abigail comes to the facility with her husband because her husband was having issues with his health. And so they decided to move into the independent area. And it just so happened that that Abigail slipped and fell and fractured her hip, and she ended up on my unit. So she was there for a while, and we, built up this rapport. And there was one day that I came in and she was upset. And she was asking me, she said, "Lynn, do you think I'm crazy?" And of course, I'm teasing her a little bit because we had that rapport, and I'm like, "Define crazy." And she said, no, I mean, crazy, crazy. And I'm like, "Well, no, of course not. Why would you even say something like that?" And the thing about people when they're crossing over, sometimes they start seeing visions of people that have passed even a year in advance. So it doesn't mean that it's just that immediate time. Sometimes they come in before that. And she told me, she said, "Well, I see my parents." She said, "I know that both of my parents are dead. They've been dead for a long time, but I see them and it makes me happy. And the doctor thinks that I'm hallucinating, and they're going to be wanting to put me on medication for hallucinations." And of course, I told her that I had heard that the next morning she was going to be discharged from the unit back to her into her independent living place, and that as her advocate, she could refuse any medication that she did not want to take. And of course, she was happy with this, and she went home. But about 6 months later, her health started to decline drastically, and she again was on my unit. And this time, instead of just seeing her parents, she was also talking about seeing a woman with a little girl. And they were so real to her that she was actually sneaking cookies and things from the dining room back to her room to give to the little girl. And this was creating an ant problem in her room. So we had to, stop her from doing that. But there was one, I usually worked the night shift. I was a single mom. I worked a Baylor shift on the weekend so I could be home Monday through Friday with my kids and be a soccer mom in the morning on Saturdays. And I volunteered to come in and work a day shift for a friend of mine that needed to have the day off. So it was after lunchtime. All of the residents were back in their room, and I'm getting the treatment cart ready to go down and do my treatments. And as I'm going down the hallway, I pass Abigail's room on my left. It looks like you're right, but it's on my left. And I noticed that there's this big picture window in her room with an air conditioner underneath, and she's sitting off to the side in a recliner. And she's leaning forward with this very distinct yellow butterscotch wrapped candy in her hand. And there was a woman with a little girl standing there, and she was trying to hand the candy to the little girl. And so I continue maybe about 3 more steps down the hallway, and it hits me. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I don't remember those people signing in at the nurse's station. And legally, we have to have a head count so that if an emergency happens and the fire department has to come, they have to know how many souls are in the building to get out. So I stepped back and I knocked on the door frame, and she invited me in, and I came in. And of course, then there was nothing there, but I could see the waffling right next to me in the air. So I knew the spirits were still present in the room. And Abigail, she says, "I'd like you to meet my friends. Isn't the little girl beautiful?" And I said, "Yes, she is." And Abigail leans forward and she's like, "Can you see them?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Don't tell anybody. They'll think you're crazy and put you on medication." So here, this woman, even though now she was in fact heavily medicated for hallucinations, was still seeing the beings coming forward for her because they were not hallucinations. And she had the wherewithal to know the difference, to not tell anybody. So Abigail, of course, passed away about a month later with her ailments that she had, and she told me something very beautiful that I've written in the book. But I wanted to move forward to the other story because I know that we only have a couple more minutes here, I believe. And there was this lady who had Alzheimer's, and I had worked at the facility for 7 years. And I remember this woman when she was up.
Oh, is that the one about the lady that says, "Take me, take me"?
Yeah. Yes.
That's awesome.
But Shirley had not spoken one word in 3 years. And I remembered her when she was walking around and talking, and she was in her wheelchair, kind of tooling along with her feet. And she had stopped in front of the nurse's station, and I had just gotten there. I was pulling my charts, getting ready to do my med pass. And I'm the only one at the nurse's station at that time. And I hear this woman yelling out, "Take me home, please, please take me home." And of course I turn around and there's Shirley. I'm looking up and down the hallway to see who it is. And I didn't see anybody. I just assumed that either another nurse or CNA had addressed the issue because the person had stopped calling. And as soon as I turn around to go back, I hear it again. "Take me home, please, please take me home." And I turn around and it's Shirley. It's Shirley calling out. And I'm shocked because I haven't heard her voice in 3 years. And so I walk out of the nurse's station, I walk over to her and I stroke her arm and I say to her, "Shirley, who are you, calling out to take you home?" And she points down the hallway and says, "Look at the angels, aren't they beautiful?" And we just so happened down that hallway to have a lady that was actively passing the first door on the right. And so I looked down the hallway and of course I didn't see anything, but then I with my second sight, I looked again, and sure enough, there were angels and people that were literally bulging through the wall into the hallway of these loved ones that were coming in to help this woman cross over. And of course that woman crossed over within a short time after that. But this is what Shirley was seeing. And so she was calling out to them. And of course, Shirley then herself also crossed over about a couple of months later after that. And that is in my book that I've just released called The Colors of Heaven, Beginnings Never End. It's a beautiful story for someone who has terminal illness or maybe has recently lost someone.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Those are beautiful stories, by the way, Lynn.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed them the first time I heard them. I was like, wow, man, that's awesome.
And they're true stories. And there are a lot of other true stories in there about near-death experiences. We also touch on the topic of suicide. No, you don't go to hell. So, we need to get that over with. And I'm not talking suicide is completely frowned upon on the other side because of not only the physical effects that it has here, but the generational effects that it does on the other side. Suicide is never, never an option. However, I'm not talking about medically induced suicide for people that are chronically ill that are passing anyway. I'm not talking about people who are severely suffering from mental illness or who have done an accidental overdose. Suicide is not acceptable when it's done out of spite, to get even with someone, to hurt someone else. Then it's not looked at well. But again, you still don't go to hell, but you do have some other things that you have to go through with that that are in the book as well. So, yeah.
Yes, excellent. I love it. Thank you, Lynn. Hey, I just had a couple more questions. Where is it all the same place where they go to the afterlife, or do they go to different places?
Well, the way that it is set up, first of all, you can choose to cross over or not. The only thing that keeps you earthbound is yourself. If you choose not to cross over, if you don't choose to cross over, you still have your mental illness. The cause of death still shows. You still have all of your senses. You have that whether you cross over or not. And you still have your addictions, even for that matter, if you haven't chosen to cross over. So when people do cross over, normally they transition with a loved one. And just to speed up, because I know that we're coming to the end and this may not make sense. It is in the book. It explains it in more detail. But after we go through our process of life review, sometimes we're required to do some schooling if there were some things that we did well, but we didn't do so well, kind of thing.
These are the books, by the way, guys. I'm going to start showing the books.
That's fine.
Yeah, go ahead. Continue, please.
when you go through all of that, heaven almost kind of turns into like an airport in that sense, and you are going off in different directions. Sometimes you do come back in here. Earth is considered the hardest planet for schooling. You do meet a lot of your karmic debts here, which is good, and it helps you to become more whole and your light to become brighter. But we're literally seen as heroes when we cross back over to the other side after being here. The life here is not easy. You don't always have to come back here. Sometimes you don't have to come back at all, depending on where you are. Some of us on this earth right now are not reincarnates, we are incarnates, which means that we have volunteered to come in for certain things instead of having to come in and address issues. And that one book is actually the picture of the front of the house, and you can see in the window that there is a face in that window, and it's
Really?
Not the tree, because the tree, I was angling upward to shoot it, and the tree is lower than the window. Yeah, you can see if you go, keep going, see it right there. Do you see the face?
Right here?
Yep, you see it?
Yeah, I see it.
Yep, that was one of the demons. There were two demons and a young man
Ooh, wow.
in the house. The first story, Omnipresent, talks about that in detail. Then the second book starts with the last chapter first, because a lot of people wanted to know what happened afterwards. So I talk about the fact that I did get a hold of the family that sold me the house and found out about how their children were being attacked.
That was a nice house, too.
Yeah. I also talk about the mental illness thing, what I went through in going through that rotation through the psychiatric ward, as well as talking about addiction and things like that. I also have self-help sections in the backs of my books to tell you how to identify whether there's a problem, in your home before you actually sign on the dotted line or you move in to rent it with that lease, or even a business building or whatever, to help. And that's a follow-up. And again, there's going to be a third book this is not part of that series. There's a third book going to be coming out to the series, which is the ghost of the man that was naked going from townhouse to townhouse, pulling down women's underwear and having sex with them during the night. I actually have a picture of that ghost. Carlito has the picture of that ghost.
Yeah, I'll show him the picture.
Yeah. And The Colors of Heaven is the beautiful side. Oh, that's another book for adolescents.
Yeah, let me go back. Okay, go ahead. Colors of Heaven.
Colors of Heaven, I wrote based on what I saw with my mother and what I've seen again and again with the experiences that I've had with people crossing over that I've seen. Also people that haven't crossed over. I've had some incidences with those. If I may share one story real quick. I was in front of a patient's room. There was this gentleman that had not crossed over. I was in front of a room that a lady was actively passing. And I see this ghost peeking at me from around this pillar in this sitting area. And I'm like, hi. And he's kind of looking to see, who I'm talking to, because this guy had obviously been dead for a long time, according to the type of clothing that he had on. And I said, no, you there. I said, why haven't you crossed over? And again, I'm going to speed up on this story a little bit too. Eventually he came over to my medicine cart and I said to him, so why haven't you crossed over? And he's like, he had a very heavy Irish brogue. And he says, milady, I can't cross over. And I said, well, sure you can. Why can't you cross over? I can help you cross over. And he said, because my mistress and my wife are on the other side and neither one knew about the other. So this man had chosen to stay earthbound and not cross over because he didn't want to have to face his wife and his mistress and the fact that he was cheating. So, there's addiction sometimes will hold you here. A loved one that you're looking over sometimes can hold you here, and then you just get stuck. However, I do help people cross over. You don't want to invite me on your party to a paranormal thing because I will be crossing people over. So anyway, and a lot of people don't want them crossed over because it's money for them. So Okay.
Anyway. And this book right here?
This book is coming out the end of this month. It's called The Gap. It's a book that two therapists asked me to write. It has to do with the gap between the birds and the bees and where human trafficking picks up and where that all comes together. It's what else your adolescent and teen should know. It starts off with everything from not going on your date with stinky sneakers, because I don't care how pretty or good looking you are. If you got stinky sneakers, nobody's going to want to sit next to you. It also goes into topics like what to do if a condom breaks. I have stories in there about how to get out of a back seat into a trunk and from a trunk into a back seat, and where the tie iron is that you can whack somebody if you're stuffed in a trunk and kidnapped. I've got lots of really, really good information in there on self-defense. Even in the last chapter, how to properly wash clothes and dishes. I mean, there's a lot of really, really good stuff in this book, and it is not candy coated. It is very straightforward. I recommend that the parents read the book first before they have their child read it to make sure that it's appropriate for what you feel is appropriate for your child. These all can be found at www.lynnmonet.com. Omnipresent is out on Amazon. Because of some problems that I've had with Amazon, I'm not selling my books through Amazon anymore after that one. So if you want to get them, please, you can get them through my website. Again, Omnipresent is available. Omnipresent, What Happened Next is available in soft cover and ebook. Colors of Heaven is out in ebook. The paperback cover books are coming out the end of February, and The Gap will be on my website the last week of this month. So it's coming up in a couple of days.
Awesome.
And you'll be able to get that also.
Awesome. And what's the name of your website again?
It's www.lynnmonet, MONET, my name.com.
Okay, cool. Awesome. And last but not least, we're going to show y'all the picture that Lynn was talking about.
Yes.
Here is the person, the guy. You can't really see it, but once I show you the next picture, then you're going to be able to see it better.
Yeah.
But
he's the first naked ghost I've ever seen. He does have his hands over his Johnson, so there's nothing swinging.
Right here, you can see the shadowy a little bit, the shadow figure right here.
Yes.
But you can't really tell until you look at the next one. I mean, this is how he was standing right there.
Yes, and the thing is this was taken in the daylight, so you figure that there's light coming through. A lot of times you can see them a little bit better in a room that's not overly well lit, type thing. But this guy showed up in daylight.
Right. And I'm going back and forth on them because that's the way I would like to see them. Like, okay, go back to that one. Okay, go back to that one. Yeah. You can see it. You can see it. Like, look, watch. I'm going to take this one off and you're going to see him right there. So this is his shoulder. This is his head. This is his arms going down. You can see the difference. And you can see, like, even back here, you can see something, where the door is, where you can see this is darker. This right here is darker. So it's like I don't know, kind of like a translucent, kind of like the Predator, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Where you can see through it, but you can see that there's something there too, So
yes.
So that's where he was right here. So
and he had a good thing going because he had lots of ladies to visit. But we all actually eventually kind of got together and started talking about it. And I learned a way actually to block the thing about apartment buildings and townhouses is when something is connected, it's hard to clear it because they can disappear into the walls and come back, or even the flooring for that matter, sometimes, and come back. But I found a technique to use that not only after the clearing, which I use fire.
And what made you, Lynn, take this picture right then and there at that precise moment?
I was coming down the stairs and I saw the waffling.
You saw
I snapped it with my phone.
Let me take a picture.
I'm like, there's something there, so I wanted to take a picture of it, and I did. Yeah.
And then you made it out after you looked at the picture and like, oh, that's what it was. Okay.
I'm like, there he is.
There he is.
Yeah, horny Harry. So it's like, geez.
Yeah, man, look at him. And he's kind of like bashful about it, right? Like, oh, let me cover my...
He's covering his Johnson.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Like, oh shoot, she's seen me. She sees me.
That's right. Exactly.
That's crazy. Hey, Lynn, just one last question. What do you think, is the percentage of the population that has your special gift?
Everybody has the ability to have my gift, and it all depends. I mean, we're all born with it. Everybody.
Really?
Yes, we are all born with it. But when you're raised in a family that's not nurtured, that there's no ghost there's no such thing as ghosts and things like that. And religion, traditional religion, you start to doubt yourself. So the nature part of it is there when you're born, but it's the nurture part that either gives you the opportunity to develop it or not. Mm-hmm. My children are all very gifted because they were raised in a way where it was supported and it was never shamed. In my growing up, even though I had the abilities, it was shamed. So I like I said, I ran from it. So there are a lot of people that have shut that part of themselves down, and they can reconnect with it through meditation.
Right. Wow. Hey, I have a message for you, Lynn. It's a good friend of mine, Stephen Barrios.
Yes,
He says, Lynn, I have a deep ecological scar. Too personal to talk here. Can we talk on a personal level someday?
absolutely. You can reach out to me through the www.lynnmonet.com. It brings a message directly to my Gmail account. And then I'll be happy to connect up with you either on Skype or if you want to do it over the phone.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be happy to do that. And I still answer all my own emails at this time. I'm not, I do have my books all over the world, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm just Lynn. I'm a single. I'm a mom, and I have to work
Mm-hmm.
like everybody else. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Well, thank you very much, Lane. I think we covered as much as we could tonight because I know there's a lot more, but we really don't have that much time to do it all in. But I would like to tell the people in the chat that Lynn has come out in other shows. One of them is Spaced Out Radio, right, Lynn?
Yes.
And y'all can look her up there on YouTube. It's on YouTube. Just look up Space Out Radio Lynn Monet,
Hmm.
and you'll go straight to it. And then there's another one where it's what's the name of it? The one that I
Um,
told you that I seen
oh,
that I really
the one
like.
in Australia. That's
Australia,
oh gosh, I just forgot. It's something Harvest. I'm sorry, I forgot. But I'm also co-hosting on Sundays.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Journey Through the Gate, a
Mm-hmm.
paranormal podcast with Cisco Murdoch. So I'm her co-host on Sundays. I'm getting ready to do um, my own podcast on Tuesdays. I'm going to have
That's
Carlito on
right.
as one of my
Yes.
guests,
Oh,
as
thank
well
you,
as
thank
Al.
you.
I'm so sorry that Al couldn't make it. I was really looking forward to meeting him tonight.
Yes, I
But
know.
definitely we'll have everybody on with that. That should be
Pa-
in the works at least by the first week in February. So we're
passion.
working on it now.
It's
Passion
passion.
Harvest.
Passion harvest.
Yes.
Yeah, I just looked it
Passion
up.
Harvest. And please excuse, I looked bloated in there. I was on steroids at the time for a terrible rash that I had, and it made my face swell up. So, yeah.
Oh.
So I look like a blowfish. But
Yeah.
anyway, thank you so very much for having me. It's been my pleasure
Yes.
to be here, and I really, really appreciate you reaching out. And please, anytime, we can do a whole nother show on some of the other stuff that I
Yes.
have
Yes,
whenever you
yes,
reach out.
absolutely.
So
No, yeah,
definitely.
absolutely. We'll definitely have you back then for part two, man, because I know there's a lot of stuff that we didn't cover, but I try to cover the best we could, the most we could, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Great. Great. Yeah. Again, thank you so much for having me, and everybody. I send you love and light. And again, forgive me. I can't see the what is the word I'm looking for? The chat.
Hmm.
So if I overlooked something or ignored something, please, it was not intentional. That way.
Yes, yes. Actually, too. That's what I wanted to say. I know I missed a couple questions, like maybe 3 or 4 questions, but she was explaining everything on how everything happened and then the stories and all that. So I really didn't want to interrupt her. So I know I missed a couple of them. Sorry, guys. I try to do my best, try to get all the most questions I could out there for Lynn, but I know I missed a couple. But sorry, don't feel bad. It's just we don't have that much time to cover all of that. So.
And don't forget to click the like button and subscribe.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you very much, Lynn. Well, yeah, okay. Well, thank you, Lynn, and thank you for being here with us tonight and telling us all about yourself and your stories and your books. Thank you, and we'll try to have you back on in a future date. Okay.
I hope you do. I look forward to that. Thank you so
Yeah,
much. Good night,
absolutely.
everybody. Love and
Absolutely.
light.
Thank you. And
Okay.
thank you, everybody, for showing up. Everybody that stayed till the end. Thank you
Woohoo.
very much, guys. We hope you enjoyed tonight's live show, me and Lynn. We hope we did a good job. We hope you enjoyed all the information and all the stories. And yeah, another great show. Actually, it's my first show of the year, guys, by the way. I said that at the beginning. Whoever wasn't here. So, yeah, I try to make it as special as I
Woohoo.
could. Yes. And thank you, Lynn. I appreciate you very much. Thank you. Thank
Oh,
you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Yes.
Okay.
And good night, everybody. I'll see you guys on the next show. I'm hoping I have somebody in mind already, and he's a big guy. He's a big guy. He's a heavy hitter. So I hope I can surprise y'all with his interview next. If not, it'll be within the next month or so. But yeah, stay tuned for that, guys. You don't want to miss that one. I'll see y'all on the next Peace out, guys. I'll see y'all on the next show. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, everybody in the chat for being here tonight. Thank you. Always appreciate your support, guys. Your continued support. Thank you. Bye-bye. Oh, and don't forget, if you're not subscribed, don't forget to subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, and we're at 800, so it's not that far. It's not that far off. So thank you. Y'all have a good night. Thank you. We'll see y'all next time around, folks.
Bye-bye.
Peace out. Bye.